The 18, there's no I in team, but there's a T in team. That was a joke, Larry. But no, I remember one episode, Face Man was in a situation, he had explained it to the young lady. He said, when we were apart, we all messed up.
What if I told you the A-Team's biggest mystery was never solved on screen? Sure, every week they saved the day, but the real drama happened after the director yelled, "Cut." Actors vanished, legends clashed, friendships broke, and careers changed forever. Was it ego, sabotage, or something nobody saw coming? Buckle up, because what happened behind the scenes of the A-Team is more explosive than anything that ever rolled out of that famous black van. Find out the real reason why these actors left the A-Team. From heroes to hostages. In the neon-lit haze of 1980s television, few shows exploded into the public's imagination quite like the A-Team. There was nothing subtle about it. This was a weekly adrenaline rush, wrapped in car chases, grenade explosions, and one-liners that echoed in playgrounds and office break rooms alike. Every Tuesday night, millions tuned in to see if Hannibal Smith's plan would work, if B.A. Baracus would ever get on a plane, and if the world's problems could be solved with duct tape, a welding torch, and a little attitude. The A-Team was more than just a TV show. It was a sensation, a marketing machine, and a pop culture juggernaut. But the show's unstoppable rise hid an uncomfortable truth. The cast members, the men and women in those iconic roles, were hurtling toward a collision with something far messier than the army colonel or the villain of the week. They were hurtling toward each other. On screen, the A-Team was a family. Off-screen, they were a time bomb of egos, frustrations, and personal ambitions. Their journey from struggling actors to television legends was a dream come true, but what started as brotherhood slowly began to unravel as the world watched. The A-Team's creation was itself an act of bravado. Producer Stephen J. Cannell wanted a show that would break the rules and turn old TV tropes inside out. The show's pitch was outrageous. 4 Vietnam veterans, wrongly accused, roaming America in a black van, righting wrongs and living by their own code. The network suits were skeptical, but Cannell was a force of nature. When NBC finally said yes, the race was on to assemble the ultimate action cast. Landing the right actors wasn't just luck, it was a battle. George Peppard, already a Hollywood legend, was cast as the master tactician, Colonel John Hannibal Smith. His silver hair and sly grin gave the team its confidence. Dirk Benedict was chosen as Templeton Faceman Peck, the team's smooth-talking con artist. Dwight Schultz won the part of the unpredictable pilot, howling mad Murdoch, outshining more traditional choices with his wild, frenetic energy. And then, there was Mr. T. Mr. T was unlike anyone else on TV. His real name was Lawrence Turreau, but to the world, he was B.A. Baracus. Gold chains, mohawk, muscle, attitude, and catchphrases that became part of the national vocabulary. If the A-Team had a heartbeat, it was Mr. T, but nobody could have guessed how quickly he would go from sidekick to superstar or how much trouble that would cause behind the scenes. The first season of the A-Team was a whirlwind. The ratings were stratospheric, the toys flew off shelves, and suddenly, the actors found themselves mobbed in malls and airports. For a brief moment, it looked like the show could do no wrong. But that first flash of success came at a cost, because the machinery of TV fame never sleeps. Schedules grew brutal. The demands were endless. Scripts landed late. The actors spent more time in vans and makeup chairs than with their families. And the stunts grew more dangerous as the writers tried to outdo themselves with each new episode. What nobody talked about, though, was the pressure. George Peppard, a consummate professional, quickly became the show's unofficial boss. He'd been in Hollywood longer than his co-stars, and he let everyone know it. On set, he called the shots, argued with directors, and demanded rewrites if a scene didn't match his vision. At first, the cast respected his experience. After all, Peppard had shared the screen with Audrey Hepburn and was a bona fide movie star. But admiration slowly curdled into resentment as the younger actors chafed under his leadership. The trouble really started with Mr. T's meteoric rise. Audiences loved him. Children wore gold chains and shaved their hair into mohawks. "I pity the fool" became a national catchphrase. Mr. T's face was suddenly everywhere, on cereal boxes, lunch boxes, and even his own animated series. For NBC, he was ratings gold, but for Peppard, the shift in attention was a direct threat. Peppard believed he should be the focal point of every episode, and the network's insistence on giving Mr. T more screen time set off a power struggle that would never fully resolve. As the seasons rolled on, these tensions grew harder to hide. Peppard and Mr. T barely spoke unless cameras were rolling. Dirk Benedict, who played Face, later described the set as a minefield of silence and side glances. Benedict himself was caught between camps. He admired Peppard's old-school discipline, but also enjoyed the unpredictable energy Mr. T brought to every scene. Dwight Schultz, for his part, often tried to lighten the mood with jokes and impressions, but even he couldn't dispel the growing sense that the show was splitting at the seams. Off-camera, the cast's relationships became more complicated as success brought new opportunities and new headaches. Mr. T was whisked away for publicity tours, interviews, and product launches. Peppard, never one to be outshined, pushed to have his own storylines beefed up, sometimes rewriting dialogue to ensure Hannibal had the last word. Meanwhile, Dirk Benedict saw his character's charm weaponized for ratings, but felt Face was too often reduced to comic relief. Benedict was frustrated by scripts that gave his character little growth. He later said that, by season 3, the writers stopped caring about the ensemble and started catering to what would sell toys. Money made everything worse. The show was a massive hit, but the actors' pay didn't always reflect it. Peppard and Mr. T quickly renegotiated for more money, leading to jealousy among the rest of the cast and whispers about favoritism. When Peppard learned Mr. T was being paid more than he was, he exploded. Reports surfaced of shouting matches in Peppard's trailer and threats to walk off set. NBC executives scrambled to keep the peace, offering bonuses and promises, but the wounds never fully healed. Underneath all the glitz, there were personal struggles too. Mr. T was never just a character. He was a brand, and keeping up that persona wore him down. He battled fatigue, anxiety, and the pressure to always be on. At one point, he was hospitalized for exhaustion, but the studio kept it quiet, not wanting to spook advertisers. Benedict, meanwhile, worried about being typecast, and Dwight Schultz suffered from insomnia, struggling to separate himself from the manic energy of Murdoch. The cracks in the A-Team's armor became impossible to hide by the 4th season. Plots became more formulaic, and viewers sensed the tension, even if they couldn't name it. Guest stars came and went, but the heart of the show, a brotherhood tested by fire, was showing strain. The press began picking up on rumors of infighting, missed rehearsals, and actors who refused to appear in the same scenes. Still, the ratings held, and the studio was determined to keep the machine running. Then came the final blow. NBC wanted to freshen up the series for a new generation. Executives decided to introduce new characters, hoping to capture younger audiences and keep advertisers happy. Robert Vaughn joined as the mysterious General Hunt Stockwell, and Eddie Velez was cast as Frankie Dishpan Man Santana, a mechanic and explosives expert. The chemistry was never the same. Old fans bristled at the changes, and even the core cast saw the writing on the wall. One by one, the departures began. Some actors were pushed out gently, given new storylines or sent off on missions never to return. Others left quietly, refusing to sign new contracts as their enthusiasm for the project evaporated. The team that once seemed unbreakable began to fall apart in plain sight. The A-Team's decline was sudden and heartbreaking, with more drama in the green room than on the battlefield. Why did such a tight-knit cast crumble so quickly? Was it fame, money, ego, or simply bad luck? In truth, it was all of these, a perfect storm of ambition, mismanagement, and the crushing weight of expectation. The A-Team changed television forever, but the real cost was paid by the very people who made it great. The legends who rolled out in that van together would never be the same again. And yet, for millions of fans, the A-Team remains untouchable. The reruns are still there, the theme song still fires you up, and the myth of the Invincible Squad still holds. But behind every explosion, every joke, and every plan that came together, the real story was happening just out of sight. The team's biggest mission? Surviving each other. Vanished in the smoke. The A-Team was built on the fantasy of 4 fugitives against the world, yet it was the very real world of Hollywood that tore the team apart. What most viewers never realized was that the scripted mayhem on screen was nothing compared to the chaos after the cameras stopped rolling. By the time the second and third seasons became TV gold, the storm clouds were already forming, and every cast member faced their own breaking point, each one 4. Reasons more complex than any plot twist NBC could dream up. At the heart of the unraveling was a truth that's almost universal in Hollywood. The bigger the show, the sharper the egos. For George Peppard, the battle lines were drawn early. He had entered the A-Team expecting top billing, creative control, and respect earned over decades. But television is a young person's game, and soon the audience was cheering for a new kind of star. Mr. T didn't just change the tone of the show, he changed the business of TV. With every talk show appearance and merchandise deal, the A-Team shifted from Peppard's old-school war story to a playground for outsized personalities. Tensions between Peppard and Mr. T only grew more heated with each passing episode. On the surface, Hannibal and B.A. worked side by side, taking down bad guys and outwitting the military police. But off-camera, Peppard bristled at Mr. T's booming popularity. He resented that NBC saw Mr. T as the secret to the show's success, and it was no secret that Peppard believed the role of leader should be his alone. There were days when Peppard refused to speak directly to Mr. T unless a third party relayed messages. More than once, directors found themselves playing kindergarten teacher to 2 grown men who could barely share a frame without rolling their eyes at each other. The producers, desperate to keep the team together, became masters of negotiation. Schedules were reworked, lines were rewritten, and, when needed, entire scenes were shot twice, once with Peppard and once with Mr. T, just to minimize the drama. But the fractures only grew deeper. Even casual conversations about scripts turned into shouting matches. Rumors spread through the set like wildfire. According to some insiders, the crew started taking bets on who would explode first, Peppard with his icy glares, or Mr. T, who never backed down from a fight. Even years later, nobody quite agrees who was right, but everyone agrees it was exhausting. Dirk Benedict, for all his smooth talking on screen, found himself caught in the crossfire. He arrived each day determined to bring levity to the production, but even he could not ignore the building pressure. As face, he was supposed to be the team's light-hearted schemer, always ready with a smile or a clever con. But the reality was that Benedict often felt invisible, with scripts revolving around Peppard's demands and Mr. T's catchphrases. There were times when Benedict would try to suggest a new angle for his character, only to have the idea brushed aside. He later admitted that the show's runaway success was both a blessing and a curse. It kept him employed, but also locked him into a role that never quite felt like his own. Yet the tension was not only about who got the most screen time. The A-Team, for all its explosions and fistfights, was also a family of actors struggling with the demands of fame. Mr. T, in particular, bore the brunt of the pressure. The persona he built for B.A., tough, unyielding, fearless, became his own armor against the world. But fame is a fickle friend. Children worshipped him, but adults questioned his acting chops. Journalists poked fun at his larger-than-life persona, and rival studios tried to lure him away with offers he could barely refuse. For a while, it looked like Mr. T might leave the show altogether. The studio, terrified of losing its star attraction, showered him with perks, bonuses, and a nearly impossible workload. The relentless pace began to take its toll. Mr. T started showing up late, sometimes too exhausted to even put on his trademark chains. Production delays became the norm, and the crew braced for daily surprises. At one point, producers considered bringing in body doubles for action scenes just to keep the show moving. But Mr. T's refusal to quit became legendary in its own right. He would push through sickness, fatigue, and even injuries, determined never to disappoint the kids who saw B.A. as their hero. But even heroes reach their limit. During the fourth season, the cracks in Mr. T's armor began to show. On set, he was quieter, more withdrawn, and, according to Benedict, sometimes seemed genuinely unhappy. Rumors of burnout and even health issues made their way to the tabloids, prompting wild speculation about his future with the A-Team. Fans wrote letters, NBC called emergency meetings, and for weeks, the fate of the show hung in the balance. As for Dwight Schultz, he managed to escape the worst of the ego battles, but his struggles were quieter and more personal. Murdoch was a demanding role, a blend of physical comedy and emotional vulnerability that left Schultz drained at the end of every shoot. Schultz has said that he felt like he was living two lives: Murdoch on set, a whirlwind of chaos and invention, and Dwight at home, searching for some kind of calm. There were moments when the pressure felt like too much, especially as the show's schedule intensified, and the scripts became less focused on character and more about spectacle. Then there were the outsiders, the actors who joined the A-Team only to be shuffled aside when the show's chemistry didn't quite click. Melinda Kulia, cast as reporter Amy Allen, arrived with big ambitions and was initially pitched as the fifth member of the team. Kulia believed her character could bring a fresh perspective, someone who could outwit the guys and add complexity to the storylines. But Peppard reportedly disliked the idea of sharing the spotlight with a female lead, and made his opinion known to anyone who would listen. After repeated clashes, Kulia's role was gradually reduced. She was written out early in the second season, her departure barely acknowledged in the story. In interviews, Kulia later reflected that joining the A-Team was a lesson in the cutthroat realities of network TV. Sometimes, no matter how talented you are, there just isn't room for a new face. The introduction of Eddie Velez as Frankie Santana in the fifth season was NBC's attempt to breathe new life into a show that was starting to look tired. Frankie was supposed to be a wild card, a mechanic and explosives expert who could bring youthful energy and fresh storylines. But longtime fans never fully accepted him, and neither did the original cast. The chemistry was gone, and even the writers struggled to give Frankie a meaningful place on the team. Velez himself admitted in later interviews that he felt like an outsider, never quite able to bond with his co-stars, the way the original four had in those first wild years. Meanwhile, the show's formula, once so irresistible, began to work against it. The A-Team was famous for its no-kill policy. The villains always ended up tied up, embarrassed, and never truly hurt. But by the late 1980s, viewers wanted darker, more realistic stories. Competing shows like Miami Vice and Magnum P.I. were pushing the boundaries, and the A-Team's weekly antics started to feel dated. Writers tried to update the scripts, but the constant cast drama made it almost impossible to find a new rhythm. The once unbreakable team spirit was now just a memory, replaced by a sense of desperation and disappointment. The final seasons became a master class in damage control. NBC ordered rewrites, brought in new producers, and staged publicity stunts to recapture the magic. The actors, weary and disillusioned, began looking for exits. Peppard, who had fought so hard to keep his grip on the show, was now quietly asking his agent for new roles. Mr. T, ever the professional, put on a brave face but stopped hiding his fatigue. Dirk Benedict tried to pitch his own spin-off ideas but found no takers. Dwight Schultz, for all his comic genius, became more of a guest star in his own life, slipping into smaller parts as the show wound down. The writing was on the wall, and everyone knew it. Cast and crew began to reminisce about the good times, the crazy early days when nobody thought the show would last, the fan conventions where the line for autographs wrapped around the building, the laughter and chaos and camaraderie that made even the worst days bearable. But nostalgia wasn't enough to keep the A-Team on the air, and as the curtain fell, there was no Hollywood ending. Fans were left with more questions than answers. Was it the egos, the money, the creative clashes, or just plain exhaustion that broke up one of TV's most beloved squads? Maybe it was all of those things. The truth is, the A-Team was always an experiment, a high-wire act fueled by luck and lightning in a bottle. The real magic wasn't in the explosions or the wild plans. It was in the chemistry of four people who, for a brief moment, made us believe in heroes on the run. As the van rolled to its final stop and the dust settled, the A-Team's legacy was secure. The actors may have gone their separate ways, but for fans, the show's spirit never died. The reruns still play, the theme song still pumps adrenaline, and every so often, an old interview or behind-the-scenes secret surfaces to remind us just how wild the ride really was. The team may have vanished, but the legend only grows. And just when you think you know the whole story, wait until you see what happened to each actor after the cameras went dark. Because the most unexpected twists and surprising new beginnings were still waiting, just around the corner. After the van. As the A-Team's final episode faded to black, it wasn't just the credits rolling on a hit series, it was the end of an era that had electrified millions. For fans, the fantasy of four renegade heroes barreling across America in a black van was unforgettable. But for the actors, life after the A-Team meant facing reality with no script, no more explosions to cover up the cracks, and no more safety in numbers. This was where their stories got even more interesting, and for some, more bittersweet than any episode could show. George Peppard, who had commanded the screen as Hannibal, found the silence after the A-Team deafening. For years, he had been the master tactician, the man with a plan. But once the cameras stopped rolling, he struggled to find roles that matched his charisma and stature. Hollywood, which once admired his authority, now saw him as difficult. He tried his hand at movies and television again, popping up in guest spots and made-for-TV films, but nothing stuck like Hannibal. The legacy of the A-Team was both his badge of honor and the weight he carried for the rest of his days. Peppard's health began to falter in the years following the show. He eventually passed away in 1994, leaving behind an indelible mark as one of TV's classic leaders, remembered for both his iron will on set and his complicated, sometimes divisive legacy. Dirk Benedict's post-A-Team journey was anything but linear. As face, he had been the team's charming con artist, always ready with a grin and a new identity. Off-screen, Dirk's next steps took him in surprising directions. He returned to his sci-fi roots with a memorable appearance in the original Battlestar Galactica revival, bringing with him all the self-aware humor that made Face so beloved. Yet, like Peppard, Dirk found that being part of an iconic team could be a double-edged sword. He became a regular at comic conventions and wrote books about his experiences, showing a rare candor about the highs and lows of fame. He joked about being the handsome guy in the back seat of the van. But there was always a hint of truth behind the laughter, a recognition that sometimes being unforgettable on screen can make it harder to start over. For Dwight Schultz, the years after Murdoch were a time of reinvention. Of all the A-Team cast, Dwight leaned most naturally into change. He brought the same unpredictability that defined Murdoch into a new chapter, moving from live-action TV to a wildly successful career in voice acting. If you've watched cartoons or played video games in the last 2 decades, you've probably heard Schultz's voice, sometimes menacing, sometimes comedic, always unforgettably energetic. Schultz also appeared in guest roles on shows like Star Trek, The Next Generation, where his blend of intelligence and manic charm was right at home. While he never reached the superstardom of his A-Team days, Schultz found a new kind of success, a steady, respected presence in the entertainment industry, no longer defined solely by the van and the madness. Mr. T's story after the A-Team is a testament to resilience and reinvention. The man who made "I pity the fool" a catchphrase for the ages faced his toughest battles off-screen. After the series ended, he took time away from the spotlight to fight cancer, turning what could have been a tragedy into another kind of victory. He became a motivational speaker, telling kids and adults alike to believe in themselves, stay strong, and always help others. Mr. T never lost his sense of humor or his love for outrageous style, and he kept popping up in commercials, TV spots, and even wrestling rings. But above all, he showed that strength isn't just about muscles. It's about enduring through hard times and coming back with even more heart. Mr. T's story proves that even the toughest icons can be vulnerable, and that vulnerability is nothing to be ashamed of. The actors who joined the A-Team later, like Eddie Velez and Robert Vaughn, faced their own brand of struggle. Vaughn, a Hollywood veteran, brought gravitas to the show's final season, but never fully connected with the fan base the way the original 4 did. For Eddie Velez, who played Frankie Santana, the experience was a crash course in the challenges of joining a legend. He continued acting, building a respectable career, but never escaped the shadow of the show's heyday. Melinda Kulia, who played Amy Allen, turned her early exit into a new beginning, pivoting to writing, producing, and even painting, proving that sometimes closing one door can open a dozen others. If the A-Team's story sounds dramatic, it's because it was, both on set and in the years that followed. But the legacy isn't just about broken friendships or Hollywood politics. It's about the way each actor found their own path after the credits rolled. Some chased new roles, others found peace in quieter pursuits, and a few battled through real adversity. Fans continued to hold reunions, share stories, and even dress up as their favorite characters at conventions decades after the show ended. What kept the legend alive was not just nostalgia, but the knowledge that each cast member left a piece of themselves in those wild, improbable adventures. What's even more fascinating are the twists that happened after the spotlight faded. Take Dirk Benedict, for example. He made headlines for his outspoken opinions about the entertainment industry, even taking playful jabs at reboots and remakes. He once called the trend of recasting iconic roles Hollywood's biggest joke, yet he never shied away from celebrating the original magic. Dwight Schultz, meanwhile, became an unlikely internet hero, sharing behind-the-scenes stories and even lending his voice to podcasts and animated series. The lines between their on-screen personas and real lives blurred, each actor carrying forward a bit of the A-Team's irreverence and unpredictability. For fans, the unanswered questions became part of the legend. Was Peppard really as tough off-screen as he was on? Did Mr. T and the rest of the cast ever reconcile fully after the old tensions faded? Were there secret friendships, rivalries, or moments of laughter that never made it into the tabloids? In interviews, each actor shared snippets. A funny story here, a heartfelt apology there, but the real truth was more complicated, layered with years of shared history, regret, and gratitude. Even the bitterest splits softened over time, and every cast member admitted to missing the chaos, the camaraderie, and the crazy magic that only happens when a show changes pop culture. The real twist, though, is how the show kept evolving in the years after it ended. Instead of fading away, the A-Team found a new generation of fans in syndication, reruns, and streaming. Kids who never saw the original run now binge the wild adventures and fall in love with the same wisecracking team. The black van, the theme music, and those impossible plans that always seem to come together, these became shared memories across decades. Cast members occasionally reunited at conventions, sharing hugs, swapping stories, and laughing about the wild ride that brought them all together. In the end, the story of why these actors left the A-Team isn't just about departures or drama. It's about growth, redemption, and the undeniable bond that forms when people survive something extraordinary together. Each star's journey was filled with twists, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes hilarious, but always uniquely their own. The show may have ended, but the spirit of the A-Team lived on through every fan who kept the legend alive. The A-Team was more than just a TV show. It was lightning in a bottle. Behind every car chase and crazy plan, real people wrestled with fame, fear, and friendship. They left the set changed forever, and so did the fans. So, which A-Team twist shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below, and if you loved this look behind the scenes, make sure to subscribe for more secrets from TV's wildest legends. Because, as every fan knows, the A-Team's greatest story is the one you never saw on screen.